Welcome back to another podcast. Here with me, I have Emma and Sarah, who recently finally got their new developer positions. I'm really excited to dive into it. I love talking to developers that just got their position because I like picking their mind and kind of figuring out like what got them there. And what I really want to dive into too is, how are the jobs going? Does the reality meet the expectations? Because I think we
Mm.
all kind of have this vision of what a developer is like, and sometimes it could, just be a little bit different. But we're going to dive into that today. So Emma, Sarah, thank you so much for being on. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Don. Yes. Hi, everyone.
Emma, if you want to get started, do you want to give a little bit, just like a mini intro, maybe a minute? Let us know, what position you're currently in, what company, anything that you like about coding. Make it your own.
Sure. Sure. Absolutely. I studied the .NET stack. I graduated from Centric Training Program in April of this year. And I landed a role as an associate software engineer at H&R Block, which they're an incredible company. They were on my watch list. It's a company I wanted to work for here in Kansas City. So I'm thrilled about
Congrats.
that. Yes, yes, thank you. What I like about coding, maybe I'll tell you about how I landed here, because I have 15 years of professional experience. And most recently, I was a product manager for a financial services company. And I worked very closely with internal and external development teams to integrate to our proprietary payment application through our API. And I really started getting interested in the technology behind the application as opposed to like whether it worked or didn't work. And I call it my eureka moment where I'm like, development, that's where I belong. This is what I've been looking for my whole life, what I want to do when I grow up. And I landed on it, and promptly quit that job and went to Centric. And, 6 months later, 8 months later, here I am.
That is really cool, and I definitely want to hear kind of what you thought got you to this position too. But we'll dive into that later.
Mhm,
But I'm really
mhm.
excited to hear that. Thank you so
Sure.
much, Emma.
Yeah.
Sarah, what about you?
It's really funny to hear you say that because I actually say the same thing to my friends and family that I finally figured out what I want to be when I grow up.
Yes. Yes.
And this is after two very um, extensive careers in some of the fields. So
Yeah.
it's interesting how sometimes things find you.
Mhm.
Um, so I actually have two positions. I work full time at Federal Home Loan Bank of Chicago. I contract through Tech Systems, but I'm a software engineer. I'm a junior software engineer. I'm actually hoping to drop that junior in the next week or so. So that's in the works, which is really exciting. And
Yeah.
I I do that by day, and by night I actually teach. I'm a TA at the Trilogy Boot Camp that's out of Northwestern University. So I do part time on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, working with students to help give them some perspective and ideas and job tips, and of course the curriculum. And hopefully they can find a position and kind of spread the love because I'm so happy that I've done this.
Mhm.
That's
So
really
my
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, my background before, I'm actually a professional
Just curious
musician.
about that.
So yeah, so a lot of
Oh
my
my gosh.
handles say it has piano in it. It actually is piano. So people think I'm Italian, but really what it is the first letter of my first name and piano. And that's been my gaming name for a really long time. And so I just kind of morphed it into Spiano Dev.
Oh, cool.
Cool.
And a gamer. That's really cool. So, was being a musician your profession before? Or was it okay? So that was your previous job before you got into coding. Can I ask what convinced you to move off of that position into coding?
Um, it was kind of I didn't take a very clear path. It was very meandering. I actually had my dream job out of college. So I graduated, 22 years old, super excited to, go out in the world and make my mark. And I landed my absolute dream job. I was teaching at DePaul University and I was performing concerts all over the world. And that was what I wanted to do forever. And, then life, happens. I have a family. And once my kids were old enough, I realized that that kind of lifestyle is not very conducive to being a mom. And so there was a year where I would kiss my daughter goodbye in the morning for kindergarten and say, see you tomorrow, because by the time she'd get home from school, I would be going to work, or I have already left for work. And by the time I got home from work, she was already in bed. And I realized that that was not sustainable. So I switched tracks and became a music teacher in like a public school setting. And I did that for quite some time as well. Um, that was definitely not my dream job. And it felt like a very poor consolation prize in a lot of ways. And I think, being a musician, being a teacher is a hard gig, no matter what way you slice it. And being a musician teacher is especially challenging because you're very underappreciated, and you're the first thing to go. You're the last thing to come in, kind of last minute. There were many times where I was given an empty room and told, teach music in here for a year. And, after doing that for 7 years, I couldn't keep doing that. And in the meantime, I had a friend who was very gently encouraging me to check out web development because he thought I had a good mind for that sort of thinking. And I did some self-learning and realized, yeah, I actually really like this.
Cool.
I saw a lot of parallels between like the practicing side of being a musician and the coding, trying things out, doesn't work, doing another thing, building small pieces, putting those together to make a bigger piece. Very similar process as it is to practicing, and it just kind of spoke to my soul in a way that nothing else ever has except for music. So it's been a really awesome transition, and I wish I'd done it years ago.
Yeah, I think a lot of us did when we finally discover it. That's really cool that you were able to meld your previous life kind of into coding. And I think that's what makes really, really good and unique developers. I mean, I have a psychology background. I was an aquatics director before, and then a swim instructor while I was learning to code. I have like a really no computer science degree whatsoever. So I have a very awkward background, but I was able to meld psychology, and I love UX. I like front end because I was able to kind of combine both. But yeah, I think it's just really cool how people just have different backgrounds and they come into coding. You see that a lot with boot camps. If you're an instructor at Trilogy or helping out with that, you probably meet a lot of people that come in with different degrees, different backgrounds. That's what I love about coding boot camps. Mm-hmm. So I want to dive into like, how's it going? I would love to hear how your first position is going. And I want to share something about mine first to get started. I was really nervous in my first position. I felt like I didn't belong there. I'm like, why did they hire me? It felt like the expectation was so high. And, it was a really good position. I talked to my boss about it, and, you just warm up to it. But I know I was really nervous going into it. So, yeah, how's it been for both of you?
It's going really well for me. One of my, we don't get to be too picky when we're trying to find that first development job, but I did have one requirement, and that was that I wanted to work in a team environment, right? I didn't want to be in a sizable team with developers of varying skill sets, and that's exactly what I have in my current role. Of course, I'm still nervous, but one thing they've done really well that I appreciate is the training piece. I'm actually grouped with two other junior level developers. They have a couple of years under their belt, but they're not senior developers. And I was hired alongside another associate. And we're all four working together and trying to solve problems, together before involving help from like a senior developer. And that's just really helpful too, because we all have varying skill sets, and I'm as ignorant as they come, but they not long ago were in that same boat. So for me, it's been nerve-wracking, imposter syndrome. It's there, it's always there, but it's actually been really great for me.
That's really cool to hear.
Yeah, it's funny. I kind of thought I'd have more imposter syndrome. And I think maybe it's because I spent a lot of time in my previous life as a performer feeling that. And so now
Mm,
it's just like, oh, it feels the same. So you're never going to be good enough. You're never going to be, there's always someone who knows more. And I
Hmm.
think maybe I just feel comfortable enough in my own skin now, um,
mhm,
that I kind of know my limits. I know when to ask for help. I know when I can do it myself. And
mhm.
I've been extraordinarily lucky. I'm actually working in the back end, and it's I think maybe because I'm not making so many like design. It either works or it doesn't kind of thing in my
Yes,
work.
Okay.
yes.
Whereas, and there's so many different ways to make it work that is my team is happy if it works. Whereas I think with UI and UX, you have to be a lot more. Uh, Judicious about how you present things because there are so many opinions about what looks good versus what works.
Mhm,
So I think that's in that respect, I'm really fortunate to have the position that I have.
mhm.
We just had a backend developer on the last podcast episode, or the one before that. I don't remember, but he mentioned um, he prefers backend because it's more straightforward. I feel
Yeah.
like front end has so many conventions and people are so
Mhm.
opinionated about it. It gets it takes a lot to even be able to follow through with an implementation. But it's just interesting that you said that. What was what were your first days like? Like very first day, if you can remember back.
So I walked into an empty building, right? We're in the middle of a pandemic and everybody is working from home. So I didn't get the typical experience.
Oh no.
But you get your badge, you get your equipment, you go home and you plug in, and then you start setting up systems. And the setup, that was probably the most frustrating part, or it seemed that it took the most time. And I think that's because
Yeah.
that process just does take time, right? There are too many
Hmm.
variables, and we're all working remotely, so we have our own
Yeah.
network issues to contend with. And I think they hadn't really done this before because of COVID. So, yeah, the first several weeks were challenges associated with setting up our environment.
Yeah, I can't even imagine doing that during COVID. It feels like a very
Mhm.
awkward kind of intro into your
It was,
first position.
it was, but we're all adapting, right? We're
Good.
all
Yeah.
adapting. When we're through this, and next time I have to do
Yeah.
it, it'll be a breeze.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
mhm,
Exactly.
mhm.
Got that behind you.
Yeah, I was so excited to be working downtown and like to be going to a big office building with lots of people. Like, I was really looking forward to that. And I got 2 weeks of it.
Oh,
Oh, no.
And, I have to say, like, I'm so glad that I got that time, that 2 week period, because in that time I was able to meet all of the people that I work with on a daily basis in person. I was able to meet some of the other teams in person. And I was able to really demonstrate my commitment to work and just my work ethic in general. So,
mhm,
because that was one of the big concerns I think everyone had in going remote is, are these people actually going to be working, or are they going to be picking their nose and playing on their phone? Like, what are they going to be doing when they're at
mhm,
home? And I think I made it very clear just in that super short time that I had in person that whether I'm here or at home, I'm going to be working really hard.
mhm.
And it helped put things at a comfort level for everybody involved. Um, that has continued to make such a difference. And I think I've connected with my coworkers in a much more deep way because I had the fortune to meet them in person before we all
Yeah.
went into our homes essentially.
And
Um,
that's a
I,
big
I
thing.
mhm.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, now I that really resonated with me because I'm sorely missing being with a team, and it doesn't matter how often you jump on a Zoom call. It's hard to
Yeah.
establish relationships through a screen, and a lot of
Mhm.
developers won't show their faces, right? So, Deb, I put my face up there.
Yeah, what
For
is
2
that? Why do we
days,
do
we always
that?
we're always on camera and we look nice and stuff, but it's like the rest of the week, forget it.
Right. So that's true. I'm really eager to get back into the office as soon as it is safe. So yeah.
Mhm.
That's good. You know, like even for remote positions, because the companies that I was at, I was never remote, but we would hire remote. And usually for the first 2 weeks, we'd like to bring developers on the team, like in the city, just for 2 weeks, just to kind of meet the team and just build up some relationships and culture. I think that's really important. That's hard, Emma, if you haven't been able to do that yet. But I'm sure people love you just as much on Slack, and COVID will end eventually, but
Yes,
we're definitely going to get through it. So you're going to
for
be able to
sure.
meet your team. They're going to be excited to meet you. So it sounds overall like it's been a really good experience. What what would be like one frustration that you have coming on as a new developer? Maybe you knew about it, maybe you expected it, maybe you didn't.
For me, it's the now I acknowledge I know very little, right? I'm as green as they come. I say it all the time, but it's just the enormity of the code base and the architecture and it's starting a new job anywhere. It's information overload, right? But in development and with the code itself, that's really overwhelming, right? And I could look at code for days and recreate it and try to learn it, but there is just so much that I don't know, and it's just going to take time. So for me, I mean, it's awesome and kind of scary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's this saying that I really like. The more you learn as a developer, the more you realize how little you know. And the
For sure.
information out there just keeps getting bigger and bigger. It's a really interesting phenomenon.
Mhm. And
What
that's
about
part
you?
of the appeal, right, of
Yeah.
development, right? We're never going to cap out, right?
Yes.
Right. We're never
Right.
going to know it all.
Just the nature of the name of what we do, development. I mean, that means you're always in process.
That's right.
That's
right.
true. That's absolutely true. That's I like that you feel that way. I'm not trying to say like you should have imposter syndrome, but I feel like taking a more humble approach to it is a really good thing, and it's going to help you grow as a developer. So I really see that as a good thing. What about you, Sarah? One frustration that you can think of?
I think the thing that has been the most frustrating, one of the sort of requirements of my position, because we work on the back end with our legacy code and we're doing a lot of refactoring and things, but we also work in AWS pretty extensively. And so they want me to be certified in 2 areas for AWS. And I had done all of the coursework and had started taking practice exams. I had an exam scheduled, and 2 days before the day that it was supposed to happen, it was canceled. And so I had been in this mode of like, studying and really immersed in all of this stuff AWS, and then everything got canceled, and I kind of switched gears in my mind, and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to work, and that's really what I've done is worked. But in the meantime, I still don't have those certifications. And now they do have it. You can take them online, and they set that up pretty fast after, like, my exam was supposed to be on March 20th. And I think by the beginning of April, maybe by the second week of April, something like that, they had an online version for anyone could sign up and take it online in your home. They have there's a whole list of stuff you have to do. And it's pretty intense. Like, you have to have a camera on, you have to show your whole workspace. I definitely need to clean my workspace before I take that exam. But and you can't leave you have to be on mic, you can't leave the camera for any reason, you can't talk to anyone. They have a whole list of stuff. And because that's what they would do in person, basically, is make sure you're not cheating somehow. But what happened was I got so involved in projects at work that the urgency of taking those exams really kind of passed by the wayside. And now it's like, hey, I'd really like to go back and get that certification, but I'm so busy. Like,
Yeah.
where am I going to have time to
Mhm.
study? And then I taken a few like practice exams and stuff, and I'm just not remembering. I'm definitely not where I was. And it's
Right.
very frustrating because I don't really want to invest the time to retake all the classes, like the coursework to help prepare you. But I'm wondering if that's going to be the only way, if I just have to take like 2 weeks and just hunker down and just do it.
Mm.
And it was from no fault of my own, but now I'm kind of like, what am I going to do about that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a decision you'll definitely have to make.
Yeah.
It what do you so what's the significance of getting those certifications with the next few years of your life? Like where are they
Um,
necessary?
well, they last for 3 years, so
Hmm.
the certifications do give you a chunk of time where you can say that you. For me, it would be I would have the developer associate certification and the associate architect um, certification. And honestly, the stuff that I use daily in AWS and I have been using, those questions are easy. The questions that are hard are, we have everything parsed out. So I don't do anything with IAM because I'm not a securities manager. I don't do anything with security really because I'm not in that department. And so when I'm asked questions about stuff that I don't have to, I don't have to do that at work. I have a team to go to do that for me. And so
Yeah.
that's where it gets a little tricky, is just truly knowing the systems that you can do all those pieces. Um, and it gives you a lot of clout from what I understand when you do have those certifications. It can make a pretty big difference in terms of, if you wanted to change careers or change
Mhm.
jobs, if you wanted to change tracks where you work, you can get promoted with them. And it's definitely advantageous to have them, especially when it's a requirement where I work.
Okay.
So,
Okay, that's interesting to hear.
mhm.
Yeah, I would say I don't know how many people on the back end were certified with AWS at the previous companies. It definitely depends on the company, but I can see I can see you wanting to get that. It's up to you. It's completely up to you whether you want to do
Well,
it.
I
But
mean, no, I do have to get it. I just I have to make. They're not putting pressure on me right now. I am putting pressure on me. I don't really want it to get to
okay.
the point where my boss is saying, you really have to get that.
Okay, got it.
Mhm.
That's
Okay.
where I was confused. It's a requirement for your current job.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Mhm.
Okay, that's a unique requirement. Got it. So I think both of you had envisioned some kind of life as a developer before you became a developer when you were studying. So you envision one thing, now you are a developer. How close do you think those expectations were met? Is it different than you thought it would be? And I'm not saying worse. I'm not saying what you're frustrated with. Maybe it's better in some ways, but how would you say that it's pretty consistent with what you thought it'd be, or there are there some things that you didn't expect to maybe have to know, or certain responsibilities that you now had that you didn't expect? I know I'm asking you guys on the
Oh,
spot,
that's a
so
hard one.
take a
I
moment to
don't
think
know,
about it.
Don. I don't know if I knew what to expect at all.
Mhm.
I just knew that I wanted to do something different than
Okay.
what I had been doing. And to me, it was worth getting some training and doing some things to put me in a position where I could do something different. And this is definitely different than what I was doing before. Um, so
I'm
mission
sure.
accomplished.
Yeah.
But I really don't know if in my
Okay.
mind I had a fully formed idea of what it would be like to be a developer.
Okay,
I
that's valid.
I tend I have to agree with that. I'm not sure that I knew what to expect, and I know that's not a very exciting answer. But I knew that my background and my skills and my desire to do it, I knew that it was the right place for me to be.
Mhm.
So my life is better since becoming a developer, um, but and I knew it would be. So I just feel very fortunate.
Okay, so you went into it with an open mind and
Hmm.
you're satisfied with it now. That's good. That's not a bad thing at all.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So now, what I want to do. So it sounds like you both have had really good experiences. I don't know if you think your companies are going to see this video and you're being nicer than you normally would if it was a private video. But I trust that you guys are telling the truth, and
Mhm.
it really sounds like you have good positions because some people, I really think it's far and few between, but there are a few people that just went into the position and they really didn't have the privilege of filtering out a position. They didn't have a choice. They were kind of forced into like a weird work culture. And it sounds like both of you had a really good experience with that. So I'm happy with that. But now I kind of want to dive into, what did you do to, like, what was your journey like of becoming a developer? What did both of you do to learn what you had to learn? I kind of just want to hear what you both did until you finally got that first position. What are your journeys like?
So are we talking post boot camp, after boot camp, when we're ready to find a job?
If you were coding and you were learning before boot camp, that
Yeah.
too.
Okay. I was not. I was not.
Okay.
Uh, a friend and a former coworker, I was expressing frustrations about my career, where I was, and she had gone to Centric, and we are very like-minded. We had a very candid conversation, and she said, "You need to go talk to him. You might like this." And this was after I'd already developed some strong relationships with developers while working in that role. So, for me, after I visited Centric and toured and talked to other students, I was done and sold, and I
Mhm.
started the program like a month later. And I didn't do any coding before I went into that classroom.
Wow.
And C# fundamentals, week 2. That's when I broke a little bit,
We
but I
all have that
bounced.
breaking point. I had mine in week 3 of JavaScript. Yep.
Just brain melt, but it's
Sure.
fine. Trust the process, right? Drink the
Yes.
Kool-Aid.
Oh yeah.
Um, and through the track that we worked on a lot of projects, and that's you have to code to learn how to
Mhm.
code. So that was the most valuable for me. And then after graduation, my story is going to be kind of long. Sorry, because I'm going
That's
to go
okay.
right into after graduation and job search. Throughout the track, I was building my network, something I had never been really good at before or really excited about. Networking always kind of terrified me, but I was able to push those fears aside with some help from Centric. And I reached out to anyone that I had worked with, that I had had a positive experience with, and that could be, customers or vendors or coworkers, managers. Ask them who they knew. Let me know if they, hear of anything. And I got onto LinkedIn and I started looking for positions that I thought I'd be a good fit for, looking for companies that I thought that I would enjoy working at. And I started finding people directly that either had that position at that company or some position close to it. And I would reach out to them directly. I would message them. I was
Awesome.
messaging strangers. I'm like, who am I? This is not me. And I
It's
would
an art.
ask,
It's an art, but it's an important one.
yes, yes. I would ask them about their experience with the company, with the team, and just engage in candid dialogue. And I learned that people in this industry are so eager to help, that
Mhm.
everybody wants to help you. So there's no reason to fear reaching out to a stranger. And I talked to 2 people that had the job I have at H&R Block. Um, and then I had a contact and I said, this is the job. When I saw the posting, I said, this is the job I want. I really want this job. Can you make a call on my behalf? And they did. And I got an interview within days. That's how it happened for me. For me, it was about being fearless and talking to people, and just asking for help, because people naturally want to and will.
That's so fascinating. I did a lot
Yeah.
of similar things in
Hmm.
my networking. I think the difference is that I was starting from absolute zero because my previous profession, there was no overlap with what I was going to be doing. And, I'm very outgoing. I'm sure you can't tell that by having this conversation. And I'm not afraid to approach people. I think that's a skill that I'm really good at. But starting, working a room where, I was always the person in the stage. I was like in front of everyone, and then I could talk to people after I did the performance. In this case, it was like, how do I get them to like let me have the performance? Like that was kind of, honing in that elevator pitch of like, let me perform for you. And I kind of approached it from that standpoint of like, you know, I can offer you things that are very unique in a candidate. Um, and, ultimately it was about finding the right combination of luck and fit that kind of worked out for me. I graduated from my boot camp in November of 2019. But before my boot camp, had actually done about 18 months of self-learning.
Wow.
So I had some things that I came into the boot camp with, including some Python experience. And that's now primarily what I code in my day job is Python. JavaScript just about broke me in week 3. And then, I was almost I was at that point where I thought, okay, maybe I don't have what it takes to do this. And I'm not sure what changed, but it was like a light switch. And when that switch went on, it just opened up the rest of the curriculum for me, because it was like a block. And once I got past that block, it made all the world of difference. Not to say that I don't still have trouble. I'm a proponent of practice every day. I mean, that's what worked for me. I am not the most talented musician that's out there, but I am a very hard worker, and I know the value of practicing every day. And I've applied that daily practice to my development and my developing skills. I do a algorithm, JavaScript or Python every day. If you looked at my GitHub, you would see it's pretty green. So, practice what you preach, but also practice, and practice every day. And that was kind of my mantra. But after I graduated, I felt like I was being dropped a little bit into a void because it was so structured and so crazy in a boot camp and so much work. And then it was like, okay, now I kind of have to do a boot camp for finding a job, but I don't have the structure. I have to make the structure. And I don't even know if like what I'm doing is going to work. So that part of it, I think, was almost more intense. I feel like I had imposter syndrome the entire time I was in my boot camp. I had imposter syndrome the entire time I was interviewing. I feel like once I got the job, I don't know. I've had a lot less of it since then. So that's been nice. It's been affirming. But yeah, it was. So let's see. I've graduated in November, and I was hired at the end of February. So in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't that long, but man, it felt like it was.
Yes.
I think anytime you're on the job hunt, it feels like forever. And I hadn't worked since June of the previous year. So when I finally was hired, it was like, wow, I get to work again. And I've pretty much felt like that every day since. I feel very fortunate to have not just one job, but 2 jobs I really like.
Yeah, and I think your experience with Trilogy is promising. It's good to hear, because we do have, I think Trilogy is a decent program, but we do have a lot of, I was just interviewing someone else that came from Trilogy, and his whole cohort, or most of it, didn't get a position afterwards. And I think afterwards, after Trilogy, like you said, the structure is kind of your own. And I think it's like 99% because a lot of people they'll take a small break, and then it'll lead to a bigger break, or
that's deadly.
And they don't create. You have to be. And so that's where I think a lot of people just generally, after they graduate from a coding boot camp, they have a lot of trouble getting a position, because they have to recreate that structure, and they have to be outgoing. Even if they're not outgoing, they have to reach out. They need to connect with people, and that's important. That's a really, really hard thing to do. But I definitely feel for, your when you felt like you were going to give up, because I know I felt like that several times, and I almost did. I remember coming so close because I grew up in Indiana, and I was aiming for a position in Illinois, but we had the mills, the steel mills. Like if you didn't really go into, I guess if you had a college education, even in this area, like one of the best things that you could do as far as income is like going to the steel mills. And I like that was the
Mm.
fire under my butt. I did not want to do that job. So nothing wrong with that job. It's just not for me. And so I remember almost thinking, I'm gonna have to do this. I'm gonna have to work in the steel mills for the rest of my life and build up a retirement. I'm like, oh no. But
Mhm.
I think a lot of people have like blips, a lot of blips of motivation, and sometimes it feels hopeless. But I think a lot of people can empathize with your story. So I'm glad you shared that part of it.
Well, and going to a boot camp for me also was a huge leap of faith because,
Hmm.
to leave a profession of 20 years and know that, like, that was, it never gave me the stability that I wanted because I found myself every summer having to spend the summer looking for a job.
Mm.
But I
Hmm.
always managed to do that, and I always found something, and I would just kind of roll through another school year and then repeat, lather, rinse,
Yeah.
repeat, do it again. Um, I think finally saying enough and breaking that cycle and taking that leap of faith, and thank God for my husband because he was the supporting rock in my life that was like, you know what, we can afford for you to do this, and even if we couldn't, we can't afford for you not to. So, like, I don't know what I would have done if he hadn't been there to kind of to just be by my side and encourage me
Hmm.
and celebrate my wins and lament with me and my frustrations and just kind of go through that whole process. um, it definitely was a journey, and it wasn't a journey I took alone. um, so
Someone in chat said marry him again.
Aw.
That's awesome. That's really supportive.
I don't have to.
That's true. So let's I think a really fun thing, because I feel like what I want to share on this podcast is kind of your journeys, what it's been like in your new position, and overall it sounds really positive, and I'm really glad to hear that. And I think a lot of people benefit just from hearing about people's stories, especially when you share the hard parts, parts where you're about to give up, and how long it took you, because I get people that message me, and like even people that I mentor one on one where they've only been coding for like 3 months, and they're really frustrated that they haven't gotten a job yet. And I think sometimes it helps just to set the realistic expectations that it might take more than 3 months. Yeah, I think a lot of people have that dream of reaching it that fast. So that's kind of the whole point of sharing some of this. So what I would love to hear, it sounds like you both had, at least a year of this journey. Around then, what were some of the mistakes you made? If you had to go back and kind of redo some
Mm.
things, what would you do differently to maybe get that first position a little bit faster?
So you mean like the job part, like finding a job, or the whole journey?
Well, I guess the journey of finding a position, but was that journey something else for you as well?
um I don't know. I think, I went into, so it's interesting. While I TA at Trilogy, I didn't take the Trilogy boot camp. So it's been super interesting comparing
Oh,
the curriculum that I'm teaching with the curriculum that I took because it's different. I did my boot
gotcha.
camp with General Assembly, and
Oh, okay.
yeah, so, and they fabulous. I have nothing but good things to say. And now that I've been working with the Trilogy folks, I have nothing but good things to say. So I really think if you're kind of looking at either one, I think you've got some really good options. And I don't think I don't see bad um they're not bad options. They are different, but both of them are really strong programs. Mistakes, maybe not networking sooner. If I had wanted to get a job faster, I would have needed to start building my network like at the very first day of my boot camp. But that said, I would have had no idea how to do that. So I think that's a tricky thing. It takes time to network. I really dedicated myself to networking and job searching I made it a job. I worked 50 to 60 hours a week on it after I graduated. And it paid off. And then I know people that I graduated with in my cohort that, took some time off and didn't spend that time. And, most of us have secured positions, but not all of us. And I think, the further away you get from your experience, if you haven't been very on top of practicing and putting projects together and doing, something like this or some other networking activity or being active and writing articles, it gets harder and harder for a company to look at you and sort of take you seriously, I guess, because you have to show that you've continued to do something. It's hard to explain gaps no matter what the scenario is, but it's really hard to explain a gap from a boot camp and then a 9-month gap. Well, what did you do during that? What did you develop during that time? What did you build? What articles did you write? What did you learn? And I think that would be a big mistake for people to stop learning just because the structured boot camp stopped. I definitely think that the biggest takeaway I got from my boot camp was learning how to learn super fast. Because when you're in a new job, it doesn't matter what skills you have coming in, you got to learn a new tech stack. Like I can't think of any job where that's not true, because even if you're familiar with the language, the way they do it is the way they do it, and they want you to do it that way. So you're going to have to learn that way. And I definitely credit the boot camp experience for helping me develop a style that I could put stuff into my brain as fast as possible. And there were days I'd be like, oh, my brain is full. My brain is full. I can't learn anything else today. Don't even talk to me. I can't put anything else in my head. But I'm a better person for that experience, and it's definitely helped me in my position.
Okay.
And I agree about we basically relearned how to learn. I've always fancied myself a learner, but we definitely rewired our brains. For me, I wish that after, there wasn't a large gap between the time the program ended. I had a job in 3 months. But I did take that break. I did sit back and go, phew, that was a wild ride. Like, I need a break. And I didn't do a lot of coding in that period between when the program ended and I landed the job. I did some. I worked on my portfolio site. But what that means for me right now is that, I work my full day and then I'm at home and I'm not into any sort of habit of, coding for fun or coding just for, to just improve myself and, improve other skills and learn new technologies. I'm out of that habit. So I absolutely wish that I had put the structured part of every day like you have into coding. Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I'd taken like maybe a week off.
It was nice.
I didn't get paid for that time. I felt like I worked really, really hard. And then I jumped into a new job and I worked really, really hard. And I don't get paid time off. So
oh no.
It would be really great to relax for a weekend. I work 6 days a week. And so
wow.
I'm tired a lot.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
But you're really energetic and chipper.
Yeah.
You don't seem tired.
I'm pretty tired.
You manage it all well, clearly.
You do. So do you really not get any paid time off at all?
Um, Actually, yeah, that's not entirely true.
Okay.
So one of the things that I negotiated for, and this would be an advice thing that I would strongly say, no matter what the terms are of if you're
Hmm.
a contractor or if you're a full-time employee, definitely negotiate. Like, ask for things, because if you don't ask, they're never going to just give it to you.
Hmm.
And if you do ask, the
Yep.
worst thing they're going to do is say no, we can't give that to you. They're not going to say no. And you know what? You asked, and so now we're not even going to hire you. Like, they're not going to do that. They've already extended an offer. They want you to
Yeah.
work for them, and so the worst thing they're going to say is, you know what, we really can't swing that right now. So when I was negotiating with my agency, because I did end up landing this position with an agency, and I just asked a lot of questions about how it worked, because everything that I had done previously was all union contracted out. So I would know going into a job interview exactly how much I would get paid if I landed the position, because it was public domain. Like, you can actually look up in any school district how much the teachers are paid based on what their education is and how many years of experience they have going in. And so you can calculate what their salaries are. Um, I had
That's
never done
nice.
salary negotiation. I didn't even know where to start, and that was super intimidating to me, and actually it still remains super intimidating to me. Um, but I said, okay, well, do you ever give time off? Do you ever give paid time off? And they're like, no, not really. I said, well, can you ask? If like, if you're saying that my base rate's going to be this, and then there are 8 bank holidays, because I knew at the point I was going to work for a bank. I was like, well, that's, you start, that adds up very quickly. So then maybe I need to ask for a higher base salary, because if I'm not getting paid, if I know going in I'm not going to get paid those 8 days,
Hmm.
that's a significant amount of money. And it
Yeah.
essentially and effectively lowers my rate. And so when they came back with the offer, they actually ended up giving me more money per hour than I was asking for. And they gave me 6 holidays and 2 floating PTO days. Now, the interesting thing about that, which they did not tell me even though I asked, is that the PTO you earn over time. It's not like you can use them whenever you want. No, we
Yeah.
talked about this. Turns out, because I tried to use one, I have to wait until 6 months has gone by before I can use one PTO, and then another 6 months to go
Wow.
by before I can use the second one. I'm like, well, that kind of defeats the purpose of PTO. So that was a little disappointing, but I do get 8 days a year.
What
Um,
are so what happens if you get sick? Like too sick to come in?
okay, so that's Cook County by law, and this is something everyone who lives in Chicago should know. You
Mhm.
have to be allowed to accrue, if you work full time, you have to be allowed to accrue sick time. And so I have been accruing sick time. I almost have 3 days of sick time because I've
Okay.
worked 40 hours every week, for however many weeks. However, you can't use any of that until you've been a full time employee, for at least not where I work, until you've been a full time employee for at least 6 months. And I'm not quite there
Okay.
yet. I'm almost there yet. And then
Okay.
legally they have to provide that because of Cook County. If you don't live in Cook County, it's up to the regional governments. And so, I'm fortunate. I live in Chicago and I work in Chicago. But you'd have to check your local tax laws and your local sort of paid time off
Yeah.
laws. But yeah, in the city of Chicago, they have to give you sick time if you work full time, but they don't have to give it to you until you've been an employee for 6 months. So
Okay.
I
I
will
really
be sick around Christmas.
That's perfect. I really like that you emphasize the importance of negotiation, because I think a lot of developers, like you said, they're afraid that they're going to get the offer rescinded, or however you would say
Yeah,
that.
that's
They
not
would,
a thing.
yeah, it really isn't. And it all depends on how you come across, too. If you're really arrogant and cocky about it, you're not getting it rescinded because you're asking for that. It's your attitude, right? Like, that's the only thing that's going to get them to pull it usually. But um, I mean, with my first position, I remember I was able to negotiate up to 4,000 more than the original offer. And I remember when they offered me it, they were giving me enough where I'm like, hell yeah, I would take that. There's no way I'm not going to take this. And I'm glad I pushed for more because I had no idea I was even going to get more. And looking back on it, I could have gotten more than I did ask for,
Right.
but I'm still really happy because it started this behavior for me. It started like conditioning for me to challenge the employer, and it's also me interviewing them, and it gave me just confidence in finding the right position that's going to make me happy and it's a good long-term fit. And I think salary negotiation is one of the most important things that you can do to really like start off very well at a company. Like just start off happy, you got what you want, you don't feel like you had to get this position. I think it's really important because it'll set up your attitude going into the company really well. What Emma, you don't have to go into specifics, but did you happen to negotiate in your position?
I did not. You two are an inspiration. I've never been one to ask for things, and I'm definitely improving in that area, gaining some confidence. But no, I did not. They offered me an hourly rate, and keep in mind, like this was a company I
Yeah.
really wanted this job. I knew this is where I wanted to work for many reasons. So it was an immediate yes, yes,
Of
wheeling
course.
and everything. So,
Yeah.
but there's definitely value in it, definitely. And they'll always start low, right? There's always more money to give you. I mean, I do know that. So ask for it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So let's, what I'd like to do is kind of round this off with knowing what you know now, um, and kind of the journeys that you went through. Maybe you both have seen other developers struggle in this field. Even if it's not you, maybe you know people that have struggled a lot more than you to get that position. But what would be one final piece of advice for developers that are trying to get a position? Like maybe one piece of advice that you wish someone told you when you were becoming a developer. What would that be?
It's really interesting. I can think of advice that has nothing to do with developing, but it's really important.
Mm-hmm.
Because I see a lot of people who are developers on, say, LinkedIn, who kind of put their whole heart out there and they say everything that they're thinking, and they'll put political things out there. They kind of they mix stuff up. Know your platforms. So if you're on LinkedIn and you're looking for a job, I don't know that you definitely want to put out there that you're like, I'm open to possibilities and come and hire me. Like, to me, it sounds like it comes off a little desperate, but maybe not. I mean, I hate to say that because I think it can work for you, but definitely, definitely be careful about, don't post a lot of personal stuff. LinkedIn is not Facebook. I would be very careful about posting political things, especially in today's climate.
Yep.
It's so polarizing,
Yep.
and you don't know where people stand. So I would err on the side of caution with that. LinkedIn is a professional site. Keep it professional. Don't curse. Don't those kinds of things. And it's amazing to see how many people don't worry about that because they think social media is social media and I can just be myself. And employers do look at that.
Oh yeah.
So that would be my advice, is really be careful on your social platforms, especially if you're using them to promote a brand. Like if you're branding, you're kind of branding yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're trying to promote that brand and you say something or do something socially online that's awkward or off brand, it really doesn't jive well with that brand that you're trying to put out there, that you're trying to sell, essentially.
Yeah,
That's
I
not a
think that's
coding
right.
thing, but I think it's an important one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to add to that, even if it's not LinkedIn, don't do it on Twitter. Don't do it anywhere
Oh yeah,
public.
Twitter too,
Be-
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
because companies really do dig into that. And I, I've had this, argument with so many people, and I think it differs based on the situation. But I love the advice of keep it professional on LinkedIn. I'm gonna be honest, like whenever you have like a really cute animal video or like an animal being rescued, I like it on LinkedIn all the time. And I'm sure people are annoyed because they see the notification of me liking it. They're like, I don't care about this content on LinkedIn. So, but overall, I try to keep it professional. But I do think companies or they will look at Twitter and they will look at your public feed on Facebook. And I know a lot of people had this weird Big Brother vibe to it, but it's true. It just happens. A lot of companies do. They're going to do their research because there's this saying it's better to not hire a good engineer than hire a bad engineer. It's way more expensive to replace that person. And sometimes they have to replace people just because there's a cultural clash. And sometimes it's you just being vocal about your political opinions at work. And, they try to feel that out a little bit. So that's really good advice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So my advice for new developers, embarking on that job search, I'm going to quote something a sales manager said to me, and that's go for the no. Go for the no. And what I mean by that is, you're going to have to burn through some rejections, right? You're going to get far more rejections than you are, right? Offers. And that's what makes getting an offer like so exhilarating, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't get them all. So you're going to have to burn through some rejections. And a lot of times if you're just submitting applications through job boards, you don't know where those are going. They're going into a great void, right? So that's where, I say reach out to strangers, find a recruiting, a recruiting contact or an HR contact, or, if you're just reaching out to someone who's in a similar role, after a bit of talking, a lot of times you can get the name of the person that you can reach out to directly and put your resume in front of someone and make them, they're not rejecting you. They don't know you, but it's not just getting lost in a sea of resumes. And it's an opportunity to create relationships and increase your network. I reached out, I followed that same approach, and I got on a Zoom call within like 2 hours of talking to a technology manager. Now I bombed that interview. I didn't get that job. It didn't go anywhere, but just that I got him on the phone and we could just knock that out. I burned through that no right away and gained the experience of another interview so I could do the next one better.
That's such a good point, because obviously you're going to have lots of interviews. Not every interview is going to turn into a job. Sometimes I would actually reach out and have people say, I want to talk to you. Just so you know, I do not have a job that's appropriate for you, but I still want to have a conversation. And I think having this mindset of it's not about the end goal, it's about the journey. And maybe the conversation has nothing to do with the job offer. Maybe it's just a chance for you to gain some advice from someone who's been in the industry. Maybe it's a chance to gain some insight into what is a hiring manager really looking at. Mm-hmm. Even if they don't have a position for you, they can give you that information, and that's like gold. Right. Or maybe it's a connection of a place where you do really want to work. They have nothing there, but they have that connection now. And I've actually had people follow up with me since I've been hired saying, hey, we've got a position that's opening up. We'd like you to apply. And, that happens. That's a real thing.
Yes.
So it's not a no, it's a not now.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I think that's really good advice. I think we just talked about it. I think it was the last podcast about how those offers might not come immediately when you want it, but you never know down the road. Sometimes you're unhappy in your position. And the whole reason I got my second and third position was because it was just the right timing. The right person reached out to me and was like, hey, this other developer really recommended you, or, you've been interested in the past. Would you consider an interview? And that was, I wasn't expecting it. It was out of nowhere. I didn't apply. And so I thought that was really cool. And
how
just
nice is that when they ask you for an interview, if you would like an interview.
I dream about that. Yeah.
It's nice. I think both of you are going to get used to it. I think both of you have very positive personalities. You're hardworking and you're humble. Just continue going forward with what you're doing. I think you're going to find that if you are a little bit more active on social media and bringing people up, like you said, a lot of developers bring each other up. You contribute to that. I think you're going to realize after that first position, if you're doing the right things, usually you'll start getting a couple people reaching out to you down the road. It gets much easier after that first position. So that's why I think you guys finally broke that hurdle, and I think you both are in a really really good spot. And even just going off of your stories, I want to add one piece of advice. Motivation waivers. I think people expect to ride motivation all the way to they get a position. And I mean, I lost count the number of times that I lost motivation. And Sarah, you were shaking your head. I lost count the number of times I lost motivation, almost quit. And you, um, you both mentioned the idea of like trust the process. If you like, there's a reason why that's reiterated so much. Just keep coding, keep pushing forward. The only developer that doesn't become a developer is one that quits. It's the only developer that will never get a job. So I just think that's something I've always kept in my mind, but it really is.
That's great. I mean, I'll be honest. I think it was in January, towards the later half of January. I went from having 3 like what I thought were end stage interviews. None of them panned out. I was back to square one. And I was like, oh gosh, now I have to start over.
Mm-hmm.
And then, it's interesting the way things worked out. The position that I have that's full time, I found out about it on a Monday. I had my first interview on a Tuesday, I think. Thursday, they asked me to come in for the in-person, or maybe it was Friday, and Saturday I had the offer. So I went from having nothing to having an offer in 6 days. So
wow.
And that's not typical,
Yeah.
but it can happen. And I really was at that point where it's like, oh, dude, now what? Now what do I do? So I think, yeah, it's not like I'm a pretty glass is half full person, but I have my moments where I'm just like, okay, glass is empty today. I'm going to bed.
That's I might even use that as like the clip at the beginning of the video. That's really good. So I love what we touched on. I actually think this is a really good place to wrap up. I think people are really going to appreciate your stories and your perspectives. Like I said, this is going out on YouTube and audio podcast platforms. When it does go out, I'll let both of you know so you can check it out if you want. Feel free to share it. But yeah, I really appreciate both of you coming on. I really like this conversation.
Yeah. I respond to everyone. So if you hit me up on LinkedIn, do start sending a message, because I'm getting a lot more requests these days. And when they come without any context, I'll take a look. And then if I don't think it's relevant, I kind of ignore it. So if you want to get my attention, please just send a little note with it. But I'm also on Twitter at SpanoDev. So.
Okay. And where can they? Sorry, where can they reach you on LinkedIn? What's your name on LinkedIn?
I think it's my full name. I think it's Sarah Panaligan. I can send you the link. Do you want me to put it in chat?
No, that's okay. Just for anyone watching the video or listening to the audio, if they want to reach out. Some people like Twitter, some people like LinkedIn, but I think your name is going to be just fine. And
yeah, I have kind of an unusual name. My husband's Filipino, so it's like there are not a lot of Sarah Panaligans out there.
Okay, good to know. I think you're going to be easy to find. All right, sorry about that, Emma. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. Absolutely. I'm happy to connect with you on LinkedIn and help you however I can. Of course, I'm in the Kansas City area, but if I can help you find a job or put you in touch with someone, I sure will. Emma Lentz. And I'm also on Twitter, pretty new to Twitter, getting my feet wet. Would love to grow that network. And it's Emma Lentz 2. I got to find Emma Lentz 1.
The number 2?
2.
Okay.
2.
You need a picture of yourself like this.
We'll do it.